If you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I like nothing more than an all-white, ice-cold gaming PC build. But tracking down high-quality, well-performing, all-white components for every part in a build can be a real challenge. So today, I'm updating my all-white PC build guide with what I think might just be the best set of parts yet. Let's do this. Take your build to the next level with APACE's sleek RGB DDR5 memory. Available with a wide range of speeds and capacities, the APACER Panther lineup has a kit for everyone. A great looking aluminium alloy heatsink offers excellent heat dissipation, while Intel XMP 3.0 and AMD Expo certification means this RAM is a great fit for Team Red and Team Blue systems. Plus, RGB support in Asus, Gigabyte, MSI and ASRock software suites makes this an easy addition to any build. Learn more at the first link in the description below. I typically start my builds by looking at the CPU and of course the GPU combo, but today, the CPU, we'll worry about that later. This graphics card really is the main character. Now this is the Zotac Gaming RTX 4080 Super, and white graphics cards used to be a nightmare, like there were just none, and now there's so many more options. We've had great choices in from MSI, Asus, Palette, even Gigabyte have got a range of white GPUs too, but I've loved this Zotac Trinity cooler for absolutely ages. So when I saw they had a white version, oh boy, I could not resist. Now I've only to this point seen images and renders of this card and videos online, so I'm hoping it doesn't let me down. Oh, look at that. So unlike others, it slims the number of silver accents down. You still get a little bit of colour here on the Zotac logo, and the heatsink, while not white, is silver rather than being black. 3 fans, it's just really, really nice, and I like how it isn't too boxy or too square. I'd wanted an RTX 4080 Super for this build anyway, the reason being that the 4090 is obviously so expensive, it's just complete enthusiast grade, and obviously upcoming rumours of a potential 5090 make that a hard one to justify at like $2,000. Plus, this provides us more performance on the whole than the 7900 XTX from AMD, and gives us all the features we might like to use, such as ray tracing, DLSS 3. Not an ad, I just think if you're spending a lot of money, and I've talked about this in a recent top GPUs video, that these features are useful, especially on that high end. The big challenge with the white build is trying to make sure all the different shades of whites match okay. And the first test, I think, is pretty good. I think that is a fairly close match to the case for this system. So let's talk about the case, shall we? This is the Deepcool CH560 mesh in white. It's certainly not the first time I've used this case, although I've only ever built in the black version before. Now you get a magnetic, really nice tempered glass side panel, and what's unique is all this mesh at the bottom, which is going to help and aid with temperatures, while also not really showing too many sort of cable mess or cable clutter, and keeping your GPU, crucially, in sight. Now, as if that wasn't enough, you also get 340mm fans pre-installed at the front of the case, all ARGB, and a 120mm fan at the back as well. I quite like Deepcool's fans, they're pretty good, and we shouldn't need to swap these out for anything, which is going to save a bit of money. This build is not intended to be a system that's cheap, but I also don't want to just throw bits away for the sake of it in an endeavour to try and make things look stupidly good at unlimited expense. You'll notice immediately one thing that Deepcool have done well here that a lot of other case manufacturers fail at is they've made all the internal elements white. Now the standoffs are black, which helps to see them, and they'll be hidden by the motherboard. There's also a hint of black here where they've done the plastic moulding for the I/O, so that could be a bit better, but again it should be hidden when looking from the front. All the grommets are white, which is really great, even the fan cables and stuff. It's something that really frustrates me when you're trying to build a system to a colour scheme and brands go through random accents that we just do not want. And that's the same reason that I've also picked up this Deepcool cooler. Now not only does it again fit with the white theme, tiny bit of black on here on the actual water block, but the tubes themselves are white, but it all comes down to colour matching. Now, you will notice, unlike when you're building a system that's, say, black, there are numerous different shades of white. There's like an eggshell white, more of a beige white, there's a brilliant white, there's a matte white, there's a gloss white, there's so many different variations, and it makes synchronising everything up in the right way really quite challenging. So you can see what I mean here. When it comes to that water block, even the top plate, while it looks black on the photos, is a reflective, kind of mirrored finish, so when all the fans and all the RGBs go in, should look pretty great. Even these fans should match perfectly with the white fans already in the chassis and be the same shade. You can also see we've got white tubes. You can see they've just gone all out here in ensuring this fits the colour scheme with very few non-white accents. Something that's going to be really important when it comes to making this build look polished and fresh. And the theme, of course, continues with the motherboard. I'm going to stop talking about what colours things are because, well, they're all the same colour. This is the Gigabyte B650 Aorus Elite AX Ice, and this obviously gives the game away. This is an AMD build. If, of course, you haven't spotted our 7800 X3D processor already. Now, this B650 board is one of my personal favorites, and I'm going to talk about color schemes again, aren't I? Yes, I am. It looks absolutely stunning and glorious. Gigabyte have done such a good job. You see boards with white accents but black PCBs. It's a white PCB. Yes, there are obviously black PCI slots, black memory DIMMs, black connections. A lot of these are unavoidable, and obviously once we've got components and stuff installed into this board, should really blend in quite nicely. In terms of all the features that actually matter though, we have decent VRM cooling around the CPU, good to see. Rear panel has Wi-Fi 6, USB 3.2, 2.5D Ethernet, and then our audio ports as well. Certainly not a low-end B650 board, gonna be cheaper and save you money over the higher-end X670 options. Talking of which, the CPU doesn't need X670. We don't need extreme overclocking, and that's because AMD's Ryzen 7 7800X3D isn't really overclockable anyway. It's something that lots of people don't realize about the 7800X3D. It's a chip that you're gonna be running at stock speeds. So yes, having good power delivery is important. It's still a chip that consumes a couple hundred watts of juice, but we don't need to be able to push things that bit further. There is a pretty big gulf between the features you get on a B-series chipset from AMD and the features you get on a B-series chipset from Intel. So it's certainly an area you can save some money. I find it really fantastic with what AMD have done with their 3D stacked cache, and I'm kind of surprised that Intel are so slow to catch up with them. Maybe it's something we'll see during 15th gen, maybe not. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. So CPU is into place. I'm gonna do the RAM or memory next. And for this, I've gone for a kit that I've not actually used before. And again, it all comes down to color matching. This is a slightly different shade of memory to the Corsair Vengeance RGB kit I could have gone for. And it's from Lexar, it's their Aries kit. Now, Lexar are probably more well known for, you know, SD cards and external SSDs, but they make RAM too, and they make some really quite nice kits. I'm gonna use the 2nd and 4th RAM DIMM slots for this build, so that's just going to slot in the wrong way round. There we go. It's slightly weird. This stuff goes in with the label pointing that way, which is a little bit odd. So Lexar, if you happen to be watching this for whatever reason, please put the sticker on the other side because it's really annoying. And that's the side obviously we can see has the sticker, whereas the side that in the build you're not going to be able to see doesn't have the sticker. Very, very weird design decision. NVMe drive is next, and I've picked up for this build Samsung's 990 Pro. In fact, I have got a bit of an admission to make. I actually ruined Samsung's 990 Pro with CPU thermal paste cleaner, and that's happened. This is a 2TB one. It's about as good as you're going to get when it comes to Gen 4 NVMe drives, and it's going to install pretty easily into this top M.2 slot right here. The next step is to figure out the CPU cooler situation, and again, look at this. Deepcool have given us silver screws, so not as good as white screws would have been, but I think the white screws, the paint tends to come off them, so I can't really knock them for that. There's various bits of mounting hardware. The things we actually need though is this bag here. This includes the 4 standoffs that you need for an AMD Ryzen config. The ones I need for this build though are in this bag, and they're the ones with the black bits at the bottom. We're going to screw these into the threads with the black plastic facing downwards, and that's going to give me 4 posts on which I can install the CPU cooler. Technically this next step could wait until later, but I am going to finish the CPU cooler mounting prep now. You'll see here there's some thumb screws which can wait, but here's some really small screws. These are going to go onto these silver brackets and install onto the bottom of the water block. That will make it fully Ryzen ready so that when we're actually able to proceed and put it in the case, it minimizes the number of things that I actually need to do. And then I can pop the motherboard in. Now all the kind of standoffs and stuff will be in the right place. It's an ATX board in an ATX case. The built-in rear I/O shield as well is going to set us up nicely. Catching on something, there we are. Perfect. All the screws and stuff you can see are on the table now. They're all included in a bag at the rear of the case. So simply a case of securing the motherboard down, 3 screws along the top, 3 along the middle, and 3 down the bottom. The center standoff in the board just here is actually holding the board for me, making things a lot easier. Pretty standard across basically all cases nowadays. Next step is the radiator, and this is, I think, where things are going to really start feeling like they come together. Now, tubes-wise, I think I'm going to put the tubes on the sort of far frontal side. It's just going to look a bit cleaner, meaning that the fans are going to go on the bottom. Deepcool fans have got this cool kind of like daisy chain system going on as well, so that's going to make cable management a lot easier for them. And if I spin this around, you see what I mean. So you've got the cable from one fan, simply just plugs right in to the cable on the next one. Look at that, nice and easy. That then basically just leaves one port that needs to receive like power and obviously the RGB signals, and it's going to pass them through all the other fans. And because the cables will be at the rear, you won't actually see any of this slack. Anyway, screws for the radiator come pre-included. Up to 12 you could install here. here, I'd recommend doing all 12, to be honest with you. On a radiator, it just makes sense to get everything installed and do it properly. Not only will this help keep the fans all in place nice and securely, but it just looks a lot more uniform when looking up at the radiator too. Did have a couple of challenges getting this thing in, namely when it comes to actually the fan at the rear. That had to come out in order to get the rad in, and then the fan has of course gone back in now, so we're back on the cooling game. We can just spin that little plate as well. Look at it, looks so good. And then just gonna screw this thing in. Thumb screws, so do these by hand to begin with. Just get them seated, and you can see there's still a little screwdriver thread on the top, so you can actually torque and tighten them up with the screwdriver. Have to say though, oh my god, it's looking good. So happy with this. So happy. I know that at this stage of the build, I should really proceed by putting the power supply in, but I just want to see how good this GPU looks. So I'm just going to do the GPU anyway, and then moan about how hard the cables are afterwards. That's how we do things on the channel. Now, this, oh gosh, look at it. It's so good. It's going to go into the top PCI slot. And by the looks of things, yes, that means the second and third covers are what we need to remove at the rear. So, just a little screw there to get that out. And then I can slide it in. I'm just like a kid at Christmas in May, June 2024. Anyway, this is going to go in, oh, I've lost the plot, to the top slot. Bit of pressure. Is it lined up? Not quite lined up. Ah, yes, we're in. We are in. And doesn't that look incredible? Oh my goodness. Now the cherry on top of all this, I know I haven't screwed it in yet, I'll do that in a minute, is the power supply. This is Deepcool's PX1000G WH, and massive shout out to Deepcool. I basically reached out and was like, yo, you know that new white case you've got, which I really like? I would like a white power supply for it too. And a white cooler. I gotta say, you know, Deepcool, just some of the darkest horses in the industry right now. You know, you look at our CPU cooler testing graph that we've been compiling, and, you know, we're testing coolers from all the big names out there, and we're running the identical stress tests and seeing what coolers rank top. And consistently, not only on absolute performance of Deepcool coolers, very often topping the charts, or, well, bottoming the charts because it's temperature lowest to highest, but on the price to performance metrics we've run as well, we're seeing some amazing results. Now, this power supply is not gonna cost you anywhere near as much as some of the other white options. It's 80 plus gold and cybernetics platinum, plus it's ATX3, which means we'll have that all-important PCIe Gen 5 power cable. Inside the box, you get another box with all the cables in, which is actually really heavy, and then the power supply, which is even put into white polystyrene. Probably that's just the colour it comes, I suppose, but it's a nice touch nonetheless. And wow, don't the TL accents on this look good? Really, really matches well. Again, all important thing, have they used the same paint? Yes. Yes, they have. Again, I know you can't see it, but it's all about attention to detail in a build like this. Now, we're not going to have very much luck with a European plug, although I appreciate that it's also colour themed. And then inside, look at those. Now, I'm actually feeling a bit silly because I went online and specifically bought some Easy DIY Fab white sleeved extensions for this build. And while they look good and I'm still going to use them, the white cables in this actually look kind of fantastic anyway. So probably the motherboard one you could use. CPU you can't see, and obviously the GPU, we're going to use the 12-pin custom cable anyway. Oh my goodness me. I am in PC building heaven right now. CPU power, we're going to need 2 of those, I think. Although heaven knows how I'm going to put the CPU power connectors in. GPU power cable in white. Yes! Gonna put that in, and then motherboard cable, also obviously in the right colour scheme, and a SATA power cable. Where's one of those? No hard drives or SSDs, but do have RGB and stuff to sort out in the build as well when it comes to cables and wiring. As I say, I will use the white motherboard extension, but I think for the CPU and the graphics card, the stock cables are gonna look absolutely splendid. And with a bit of luck, I think I might be nearly done. There's still some cable management to do and general tidying, and I haven't yet put in the front panel cables, but will it turn on and power up? I just cannot wait. So let's go ahead and find out. Oh yes, that's on all right. Different LED modes should change all the fans at the front, so we can get those synced up with the ones at the top. And just like that, it's booted. I've got to say, I'm not 100% sure on the Rainbow Puke, especially on these front 3 fans. Very, very quick, and the one at the rear. So what I'm going to do is wire all this up to the motherboard, jump into the motherboard control, and get it looking that bit more refined. As you can tell from the back as well, I've also got quite a lot of cable management to do. So I'll rejoin you after the cable management for, of course, some benchmarks to see how this thing performs. Oh yeah, and maybe a cheeky little montage in the middle too. through into performance, and the 4080 Super performs about as you'd expect. And by that, I mean very well in basically everything. The first game I tested out was Call of Duty's Warzone at 4K high settings. Here the build really did well, 133 FPS on average. This was leveraging DLSS at the quality preset, which obviously has the more minimal performance upside, but also keeps that visual fidelity looking as strong as possible. I was really impressed with the numbers here and thought for 4K this was pretty competitive. Modern Warfare 3 is a similar story, 4K high, DLSS on quality, the frame rate very similar with 152 FPS on average. We always see Modern Warfare 3 perform slightly better than Warzone on the frame rate front, and this build was no exception. Starfield is next, and it was admittedly more of a struggle. 4K high, and the build only pulled in 83. I say only 83 FPS on average, still really pretty decent, but obviously we have seen better, and I think this just goes to show how hard of a game Starfield is to run. So this system, while a 4K build, may have areas where 1440p is particularly a bit more advantageous. Hogwarts Legacy at 4K was a pretty similar story. Previously with a 1490 we've achieved more like 100 FPS, here we were down at 85 frames per second on average, so about 15% slower than Nvidia's much more expensive 4090. I don't want to say rival, it's this step up, right? But the 4080 Super in Hogwarts did well, but frame rates I wish were a little bit better. Fortnite picked up significantly, as you might expect, at 1080p competitive settings with 328 FPS on average. You might be like, James, why are you testing this? Everyone always asks us. So here we are, 328 at 1080p comp, while Apex Legends rounds off our testing 4K high, and the system pulled in over 200 FPS, 202 frames per second to be precise on average. What do you guys think of this build? Let me know in the comments below. Get subscribed to see more from us if you did enjoy this one, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.